to be portrait, so we'll see if that works. Right, I just turned my laptop on and discovered that's got no charge, so we're going well today. So yes, it's all right. 12:15 would be a good time to do it, and I've just not quite finished doing all the things that I wanted to crack on and do first, but never mind, we shall make it work. Right, let me grab my laptop. We're going to dye this month's seasonal changes. Super. Right, that is now working because that's now got some charge. Just need to sync the photos through to that, because the winner that we are going to dye this time is called Each Peach, which is the apricot-y, goldeny yellow tones. Should be quite nice as a kind of a really nice summer theme. Right, let's wait for my laptop to sync through with my iPad. And I went, I haven't got an inspiration image ready because it's all saved on devices that are streaming stuff. So yeah, so I've been busy dyeing Rambouillet this morning for a huge, great big batch of fibre. There's going to be a big shop update done tomorrow. It's really hot here, which is another reason I wanted to get it done super early this morning, because I quite like to be out of the studio before it gets bakingly warm and hot. Hopefully, so look at that. So I just need to mix up some more of one of my yellow dyes. So that's just finished dissolving. So I'm just going to fill that up so that it's ready to use. And we will then get cracking. Back up, because I'm feeling I'm going to want some of this golden yellow shade. Let's not yellow dye everywhere. There we go. Perfect. Okay, I need something to test out the colours. So those of you who have not joined me before for these live streams, they're usually slightly less chaotic. Not always though. You're going to sync photos. If not, I'm going to have to grab there. Right, let me just pop that up onto there. Let's quit you and restart you. And you. There we go. That's better. I've now got photos that are actually going to come through so that I can see what it is that we're going to be dyeing. Let me move these bits of fibre out the way. So these are stuff that's waiting to go in and be heat set, and we will crack on. Yeah, go on, do the update thing. My laptop hates me. Right, 2 seconds. Let me see. Mostly, oh there we go, photos. It's up here, so you can see in comparison to what I've managed to mix up, it's the second one, that one there, it's just got far too dark. So I'm going to start again. This dye will get put to one side, it'll get used in another project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically stick to the same recipe but half it, because I like the colour palette, it's just there's too much colour that is there. So we are going to swap to, let's just do 10 scarlet, 2 black and 2 pink. Which means that red, I need to pull off some scarlet dye so I can measure out a smaller quantity of it. All the others I have. So yeah, so the Baltics kind of give me a relatively good large measure of dye, because quite often when I'm dyeing, I'm working with like 600 grams of fibre all in one go. So therefore it's very rare I need to measure out tiny quantities of dye. But when I'm developing recipes, because I'm doing it on a much smaller scale, that's where I go back to the method I used to use when I wasn't doing quite so much dyeing in the volume of this, and we go back to measuring things out with the measuring syringes, because that way I can get an accurate quantity. There we go, that's better. I don't know if it's going to look like it on screen, but we've ended up this colour here, so it's just going to be paler. So you can sort of see the colour palette that we've ended up with overall. We've got lots and lots of different colour shades going on there that are all in this warm, peachy, orangey, yellowy type colour palette. Right, so we have done the darkest colour, we've done the apricot-y salmony colour, we've done the golden yellow colour. So the ones that I've got left down here are the ones that are sort of that lemony limey colour that are going to provide our contrast accent. So I'm going to do the darkest green first. This has got more yellow in it than it might sort of initially visually appear. So let's have another measuring jug. And we're going to mix this one using a different version of the yellow. We're going to mix it using a lemon yellow shade. So it's a much more, it's almost like an acidic sort of colour. It's much darker, not much darker, much less tending towards red, and it tends towards more the blue. So it's quite good for mixing up these limey greeny type colours. So let me write down that 25 lemon. I'm just going to make it a little bit more muted by adding in some of the black dye, because otherwise it's going to be, as soon as I put anything resembling blue into this, it ends up being lime rather than this nice sort of subtle citrusy colour. Sort of, it's almost like a pale olive kind of shade, but a little bit not quite so mucky. But what I do need is, what shade of blue shall I put on? So I've got to choose the 3 blues that I can use. I've got a very dark royal blue, I use a turquoise blue, and I've also got a grey which tends towards blue. But I'm actually wondering if I might, they can all be very, very dominant with the yellow. I've got 2 greens that I could turn more yellow with the addition of this yellow. So I think I'm actually going to use one of those, which is like a jade green colour. So let's grab some of that. Okay, super. Let's grab a measuring syringe again. So far I've got 25 lemon and some black in there. I'm going to go for adding, let's go for 10, see where we end up at. I'm feeling I've just sent it to green. Let's see. Yeah. So if we look at that, that's much too green for what we're after. It's amazing how little dye that you need. So I'm going to do the same thing with that. I'm going to put it to one side. I'm not going to bother trying to mess around with it anymore. So I'm going to stick with those colour combinations. I just need to use less of the jade. We'll go for 5. And a little bit of the black just to mute it down a little bit. That's looking better. So again, I'm just going to pop a little bit of water in it because this is going to need diluting down. Okay, that's looking a little bit more like it. So that was the original one that I was like, that's too green. So we've just used slightly less of the jade green dye, and that's just taken us slightly paler, slightly murkier, the yellow and when the black are shining through slightly more. The yellow will become a little bit more dominant once it's been dyed and is on the fibre. So even though it's a little bit greener than the original palette, I think I'm going to stick with that because I think it's going to be okay for what we want. And then the final one is going to be our very, very palest, almost like it's like a buttery colour, buttery yellow. Running out of containers. So, how much dye do I want for that one? Not a lot. Let's try 5 of the warm golden yellow, because it's going over the top of a fibre that is cream, so that always makes them look slightly different than they do on the very, very white kitchen roll. So it does play a little bit of an impact in the way that the colours appear. Rubbish syringe, thrown away. Eventually the plastic sort of just wears away a little bit and they stop being completely airtight. Just get rid of the bit of green off the end of there. Let's have a look. So I think that's our very pale lemonist yellow there. I haven't added anything into that. I'm trying to decide if it wants any red or not, but I think the problem is because we're using such a small quantity of dye, as soon as I start trying to warm it up, if we're not careful, we head into it being orange. So I think that's going to be okay and is going to work from us. Right, I am just going to check whether I need to pull anything else out of the oven, and then I'm going to put those dyes onto the fibre. But what I don't want to do is leave anything, no, that's okay, leave anything that I've done this morning sitting in there for too long, because then it ends up being over processed and not nice to spin. But I'm just going to chuck these in because these are ready to go in. And then I'm going to grab hold of our Cambrian wool and I'm going to start putting those bits of dyes that we've just mixed up. I've now steamed up. I'm going to put the dyes we've just mixed up, they're going to go onto that fibre. Okay, so it's far too big a bit of cling film, but never mind. So this fibre went into soak yesterday. Just to make sure it was thoroughly wetted through. And I'm just going to lay it out. So all of these are, it's a low water method of dyeing fibre. So we end up with very, very, basically just the dye and as much water as we need to sort of get the dye to spread out over the surface rather than anything more than that. I am just going to turn you lovely people around that way slightly. That'll do. Super. So this looks like, oh my god, that's really vibrant bright yellow, but it's got to be spread out all over the surface of this wool. And I'm literally just squeezing it in and spreading it through. This might end up being too dark. Judging colours when the fibre is wet is always really hard because they're always much more reflective when they are wet in comparison to when the fibres are dried out. I always say with these that I always sort of kind of do it in front of you live and then take a look at them once they're actually completely processed and decide if the colours are right, and if not, I make changes, tweak the recipes that I've done, take a different approach to mixing the colour to make a better colour palette that's going to work in spinning fibre form rather than just on computer screen form. So these aren't always the final versions of the colours, so don't panic if you're looking at that and going, oh, that's yellow. In part, it's a lot more yellow on the screen. Looking at the screen and looking in comparison to like visual realised, it's not quite that scarily yellow. But we shall see. So I'm just wrapping it up nice and tightly to make sure that all the dye is held in contact with the fibre. But yeah, and then these get heat set to get the bond formed with the dye onto the wool. A bit more than that. Left to cool down, and then they get rinsed to make sure there's no loose dye particles. And these will probably go into the shop on Friday because I'm out all day on Thursday, so I'm not going to be able to get it into the shop for the 1st of August, but it will be ready on the 2nd of August. And the last batch of the July colourway, if you missed out on that, that went back up into the shop at beginning of the week, I think it was. That could just do with a little bit more water in it. So if you like purpley tones, that's going to be the one for you. If you don't like these warm peachy pinky colours. So the nice thing about these is that they change every single month. So I only dye this colour during August. Once we've got through August, we pick a new colour for September. So if you don't like the colours one month, then the next month the chances are they're going to be completely different. Hoping this one is not going to be too green. I'm still a little bit concerned it's coming out a little bit limey. We shall see. It's really hard to get proper accurate colour matches until the whole process has gone through. So all that's going on these before they are being heat set is citric acid, which is basically lemon juice. It just makes the conditions inside where the fibre is with the dye, it makes it slightly acidic, and the dye forms better and quicker bonds onto the fibre when it's in slightly acidic conditions. There we go, so that is number 2. That might be too green, we shall find out. So we've got the 2 goldeny yellows and the apricots and peachy salmony colours to do. As I say, I will take a look at these and decide if I need to retweak, redevelop the recipes before they end up going live. Because if they sell out the first batch, then I carry on dyeing more all the way throughout August. That leaves a little bit of water in it. None of the colours are super dark this time. Just spreading. So these colours, I always say they're like a semi-solid colour, so there's always going to be a little bit of variegation in them. Which is clanging, that's clanging. Stop that, 'cause that is annoying. In comparison to the commercially dyed, which are quite often done in the fibre form before processing, but are also done at pressure and on an industrial scale, you don't end up with a completely flat and even colour. It does vary in just tonal value just slightly, so it just makes it a little bit more of an interesting spin. You just end up with a little bit more variegation in your skein of yarn. So let's wrap that one up. So again, this one looks quite dark. It's not going to be this dark once it's dyed. and we shall see whether how it sits in the whole palette, if it needs any changes. I have a feeling some of these might need changing, but we'll see. My colour matching vibes might not be, my head might not be in the zone completely. It's a bit like cooking. Of some days you're just like going, oh, that's all just gone perfectly beautifully, and then some days you're like going, no, that's just not working today. So let's mix that up. That needs a little bit more water in it. So this is our darker, warmer yellow tone. This one I quite like. This one I think is going to have worked. But I have to confess, I am not a peachy red and orange one. If I'd have had free reign this month of which one I would have picked either of the other two. But loads of you voted for each peach this month. It was like by far and away the runaway winner, which is not what I was expecting, because I re-put up to vote over in the Fellowship of Yarn. I put Boat Trip back up in the mix again, which is one of the colour choices last month, and it got loads and loads of favourites that time. Votes, but I put it up again this month and not hardly anybody chose it, so just goes to show. And then the other one was Flamingo, which was turquoise and pinks, which I'm a sucker for blue tones. They'd be kind of what I'd always instinctively go for if I never naturally reach for yellow colours like this. So that's that one. And one more to do, and then I'll show you what they look like as a set. And we shall see where we have ended up. Let's find the end of the fibre. There we go. And brilliant, this one. So this one I think is the more salmony of the two colours. So you can see it's much pinker in tone as it's going onto the fibre. Again, looks darker than it's going to look as finished fibre. Might have added slightly too much water onto this one, but thankfully the cling film usually holds everything in place pretty well. Just trying to make sure, like this big pale patch there, don't mind a little bit of tonal variation, but in these semi-solid colours I try to make sure there's not great big pale patches in the fibre. Let's wrap that up. Let's show you where we've got to. I have a feeling I am off my game today. It might be that these colours change by the time you see them next. But if I put them in the same order that they are in the inspiration picture, we can see where we've got to. So, right. That's where we've got to. They're nice. I have a feeling this green is too limey. This one is probably also too bright. This orange might be too dark. So we could be onto a set of losing colours this month. And I might have to go away and rework these into sort of not when I'm not trying to think and do running commentary all at the same time. But I'll put them in for processing. They'll get heat set, and I will look at them as dry fibre before I decide that I hate them all and I'm going to re-dye them. But yeah, so if you end up deciding you like any of these, they may pop up into the shop as individual braids of semi-solid colours. So yeah, so I have a feeling the heat's got to me today. They are not my most successful mixes out of colour mixtures. I hope you'll come and join us again next month, and maybe I will do a better job of doing this, coming up with the sets of colours to match the photo, because I really like that colour, and I think that one's right, but I think all the rest of them, these three might not be staying in the recipe as they are currently written, but we shall see what happens. The fibres sometimes surprise me in what they do, even though I've been doing this for years. But yeah, so thank you for coming and joining me. I've felt very distracted today, but I hope you still enjoyed it. And we will be back next month for doing the September choices. And I shall see you all again for then.